what is your full name?
William Virgil Weaver.
Okay. And what name are you normally called?
Bill,
Where were you born?
Grafton, West Virginia,
Okay.
Taylor County.
Okay. What is your birth date?
July the 10th, 1923.
Okay. Did you marry?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your spouse's name?
Nola S. Weaver.
Okay. What was her maiden name?
Nola Shuttleworth.
Okay. S-H-U-T-T.
Leworth.
Okay. I've normally heard Shuttlesworth.
Yeah.
Shuttleworth. Did you have children?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything in particular you'd like to mention about your children or your wife?
I had two. I had a girl. She's now 50 years old, and I got a boy that works in Georgia, and he's 46 years old.
Okay. What's your son's name?
He's named after me, William V. Weaver II.
Okay. And how about your daughter?
My daughter's named Glenda, G-O-E-N-D-A, Lou. Glenda Lou Knight.
All
She's
right.
married to Presley Knight.
Okay. And she's here in this area.
Yeah, she's my neighbor.
Okay.
She's
Great.
right next door.
Okay. Who were the first members of your family to come to Taylor County or Grafton?
My dad moved up to Grafton and I think around 1900 from Boozeville, West Virginia.
Okay. Okay. Do you know what brought them to Grafton?
I think better working conditions, I guess, at that time.
Okay. Did they come with the railroad or
No,
just?
my dad was a teamster.
Okay.
Yeah, he had the horse and wagon.
Okay. Great. Did you attend school in Taylor County?
Yes, ma'am. I attended school in Taylor County. I attended a county school and then a city school back when they had county and city schools. I lived out of the corporations, so I had to go to the county school. Then I think it was about 1935 or 6 they consolidated and didn't have city and county, just had county school. So I transferred from the Leach School, which was a county school, to First Ward School, which was in the city when I was in the 4th grade.
Okay. Have you ever served in public office over here?
Yes, I ran for the Board of Education in about 1965 or 66, and I lost by 8 votes. And then after that, I was appointed to the Board of Education to take in and expired term of John Jenkins, who was president of the board. And I think that was about 1968 or 9. And then after the appointment, I run for office for the Board of Education, and I served 23 years in the Board of Education. I ran 3 4-year terms and 1 3-year. Three 5-year terms and 1 4-year term. It's about 23 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you live here in Grafton during the Depression?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that like?
I lived in Depression, and it was real hard for me because my dad died when I was 8 years old, and that was in 1932. And he left my mother with 6 kids, and we only had $8 in our house in cash and no insurance, but we owned our own property, which was a small farm, 21 acres, and we raised a large garden and always raised a hog to butcher in the fall to eat. But my mother went to work and worked on government projects, like she worked for the cannery, she worked for the sewing room, and then later on she got a job with the Board of Education and was a cook in the First Ward School. But my mother, she died when she was 63 years old because she had sugar diabetes.
You say she worked in the cannery and sewing room. Would that have been at the industrial school?
No, that was a government project that they had right uptown in the city of Grafton.
Okay.
They just rented rooms, the government did, and they set up shop there. And they canned a lot of vegetables and fruits in gallon cans, and then they give it out to the public, which were the ones that was qualified,
Okay.
the low income people.
Yeah. Sounds like she worked hard.
Yeah, that's right. She was a hard worker.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Now I have some questions about the military. Were
Sure.
you ever in the military?
yes, ma'am. I joined the service in 1942, in late 42, and I joined, but at that time everybody wanted to go to the military, and they wouldn't let you join one specific unit. You had to what they call volunteer for the draft. I volunteered for the draft, and then wherever they needed you, like in the Army Air Corps or the Army or the Navy or the Marines, whichever one needed you, that's where they put you. And they asked me if I'd want to serve in the Air Corps, and I said yes, because I already had a brother in the Air Corps, and I had a brother in the Navy who was already in the service. So I said yes, I'd rather go to the Air Corps, because my brother wrote to me and said that they had good food, and it was sort of easy, so I wanted an easy route, so I said yes, I'd like to go to the Air Corps. But then when I got in there, they sent me to Clarksburg, and I passed the test, all the tests, and then they sent me to Fort Hays, Ohio, and they issued our clothing there, and then the next morning they put us on a train headed south. We didn't know where we was going until we got there, and we went to Camp Claiborne, Louisiana, and we got out, and there was a whole train full of recruits, and they got us out there, and the commander of the camp come down, and first thing he said was, "Welcome to Camp Claiborne, Louisiana, the home of the engineers." So I was in the engineers, and I spent about 15 weeks in basic training there in Louisiana. And Camp Claiborne was a large camp, and it was 85 miles west of Alexandria. Alexandria, I think, is the capital of Louisiana. I'm not sure, but I think it is. It's a large town, and that's where we went on weekend passes. And then after I got my basic training in, they put us on another troop train, and we rode for 2 or 3 days through Texas and through the south, and then we ended up in the middle of the desert in California, about 10 miles out of San Bernardino. And they pulled right up in the middle of the desert and let us all out, and then we had everything with us, tents and everything, and there wasn't no buildings there or nothing. We just started from scratch, and we put up all the tents, and you put up your trains and your mess tent and everything, and then we just went from right there. We was what was in, they called then, was Desert Training Center. And at that time they was having, the war was in Africa then, Rommel's in the United States, and they was fighting in the desert, and they was going to train us to fight in the desert. So we trained outside of San Bernardino, California, and then we'd go to Apple Valley, Cherry Valley, Banning, Mouse, Arizona, and then all up through to Albuquerque and back around. But we was always in the 5-man tents or a 2-man tent. And we never was in a building at all that time. We was there at the desert, and we had to wear our steel helmets all the time, and we also had to carry our rifles. We was that kind of training, and our number was APO 709. That was, we was getting ready to go overseas, and so we didn't have a like San Bernardino or Banning or nothing, but your mailing address was APO 709. So after we got that training, well, then they sent us to Camp Beale, California, which is up on the other side of Sacramento at Murraysville, California, and that's up next to the Oregon border. And they sent us up there for Advanced Infantry Training. It was about 12 weeks, and that put us up into December of 1943. And then they put us on trucks, and they took us down to Shoemaker, California, and they put us on a great big barge, and they took us down the river from Shoemaker, California, runs down to Sacramento, or to San Francisco. They took us down there and they put us in great big buildings on the wharf, great big metal buildings, and they kept us there till nightfall. And then they said, well, you're going overseas, but they wouldn't tell you where you was going. But they loaded us up on this here big ship, biggest I ever seen. I'd never seen a ship that big before. The name of it was USS Roe Shan Bo, and they said it was a French luxury liner before it was converted into troop carrier, and it holds thousands and thousands of troops, and they was all, you go in on the deck, and then you go down ladders, like stairways, ladders, and you go down maybe 3 or 4 floors, and you get down there, and when you got down there, of course, in them days there was no air conditioner or no fans, and it was real hot down inside the ship, and it had an odor to it, like a lot of men with perspiration and everything. And it was very uncomfortable. And then the showers you take, you had to use, well, that's the only water they had on there except drinking water. They had the water from the ocean. It was salt water, so you took a shower with salt water, and after you got done, you still felt real slimy with that salt water. And so then it took us 16 days, and I got while I was on board ship, I got the mumps, and they had to put me in isolation. And the Navy run the ship, except they had a few Frenchmen on there. And the French were still controlling the ship, but the Navy was on there. So I went to the Navy doctor, and he said, you got the mumps. So I had to go in isolation then. They put me in isolation. And then the first place we stopped was New Hebrides Island. And they wanted to put me off there and put me in a hospital, and I told them I'd rather stay with my unit. So then we went from New Hebrides Island to Guadalcanal, and that's where I got off, and they put me off there with my unit, which was, at that time, it was a 1394th Engineer Combat Battalion. And they put me off there, and they put me in the Night Station Hospital, and I think I spent the first 3 weeks or 4 weeks in the Night Station Hospital after I arrived on Guadalcanal. But then later they released me and sent me back to my company, which was Company C. And I joined my unit, my Company C unit. And then we participated in, there was a mop-up affair there at Guadalcanal, because the war was just ending there, but they were still fighting, but not right around where we was at that time. But there was still a lot of Japs around you, and you had to be careful all the time. And then we had one time we had a ship to blow up there where we was unloading ammunition and stuff, and the ship blew up, but I wasn't there at the time, but a lot of young guys lost their life there when the ship blew up. And man, we was on Guadalcanal for almost a year, and then they put us on LCIs and transferred. They didn't tell us where we was going, but we went by a lot of islands and a couple days ride on this ship, and then we got off at Cebu. Cebu in the Philippines. Cebu is the second largest island in the Philippines. And they let us off in Cebu City, which is the largest city in Cebu. And it was a lot better than Guadalcanal because, you know, it was more the Spanish had lived there for years, and it was more like home, you know. And so it was good to be there. But yet there now it was combat there. The Japs, they hadn't secured the island yet. The Army hadn't. So we was there about, I don't know. We was in the Philippines. I was in the Philippines another 12 months. So I've been overseas in 2 years. 12 months in Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands, and 12 months in the Philippines. Part of that time I was on Leyte, the island of Leyte. That's after the war ended, and they shipped me back to Leyte and then transferred me into an armored division so I could wait my transportation home. After the war ended, you know, when they dropped the atomic bomb, then the war was over, and then if you had enough points, you could come home, provided you had transportation. Well, I had the way they added it up, it was so many months in the service, so many months overseas, and then combat. And then I think my total was 68 points. And you didn't need that many come home, but I couldn't come home because I didn't have enough transportation at the time. So they sent me to Leyte, and then I waited, and I got aboard ship on Thanksgiving Day, 1945. Thanksgiving Day, and they had Thanksgiving dinner. I remember they had turkey, and it tasted real good. And then we was aboard ship, and I think it took us about 3 weeks in to come back to San Diego. And in San Diego, we was supposed to fly to Fort Knox, Kentucky to be discharged, but something come up, and they said they was going to take a troop train. So then troop train left San Diego, and then we got on that troop train. It was about 3 more weeks. We come to Camp Atterbury, Indiana, and that's where I was discharged at Camp Atterbury. That was the 21st of January 1946, and that's when I come home. And when I come home, then of course everybody was glad to see me, and my mother was real glad to see me because she had 3 sons in service. I was the last one to go in. I was in the Army. My brother Tobe was in the Air Corps, and my brother Ralph was in the Navy.
How old were you when you went in?
I was 19 years old.
Were you married yet?
No, I didn't get married till after I come home in 1949.
Did you know each other?
No.
Okay.
She's 7 years younger than I am, so we didn't meet in school or nothing.
Okay.
I met her at the place of work where I come home, and at that time they had what they call a 5220 club that the government sponsored. 5220 was you got 20 if you was in the service, you got $20 a week for 52 weeks. That kind of make an adjustment back to civilian life and also get a job. So you had 52 weeks at $20 a week. Actually, that was more money than you made while you was in the service. So actually, everybody thought they was rich, and some of us didn't even look for a job. I know I didn't for about 6 months. And finally, this man, a neighbor of mine, lived right up here on Main Street, Wayne Williamson. My brother worked for him at the Hazelite Glass Factory, and he stopped me and he said, "Hey, when you going to go to work?" I said, "I got a job for you." And I said, "I'm making big money now, $20 a week." So he said, "Well, you're going to have to go to work sometime. That's going to run out." So he offered me a job, so I went to work for the Hazelite Glass Factory. And it was real hot in there. I finally worked myself up to where I was running the glass machine, but it was real hot in there. And you worked 6 hours on, and then you go back and work 6 more hours. But it was real hot in there, and I never did care for it. But my wife, she worked there. Well, I met her because she worked on the layers. She packed the glass. She was a selector. So that's where we met. And actually we got married. We hadn't went together for only about 6 months, I think, when we got married.
Okay.
And she
Well, it
just...
looks like it was a good thing. You're
Yeah.
still together today?
Yeah,
Both
we've
look
been married
happy,
over 50 years.
Happy, healthy.
Be 52 in July.
52 years.
Great. So you'll have a 52nd wedding anniversary next month.
There's
Yeah.
our 50th anniversary
Right
picture.
here. This
Down
one,
here.
right here, the bottom one.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
Kids and grandkids.
Good. So what day of July?
16.
16.
It's my brother's birthday.
My birthday is July the 10th. Our anniversary is the 16th, and her birthday is the 23rd, all in July.
There's mine.
Yeah, a couple of weeks there to have them all.
Yeah, okay. Let me ask you this. While you were in the service, did you make any friends that you kept in contact with later?
Yeah, and when we was on our honeymoon, we come back and we went to my wife's aunt in Richmond, Virginia, and got married in the Presbyterian church there. And then we was on our honeymoon. We stopped at Ashtabula High to see a friend of mine that I was in the service with. And he promised to come see me, but he never comes, so I never went back to see him. And then we drove on to Lima High, which is on the Indiana border there. And I had a very good friend that I was in the service with the whole time I was in the service, over 3 years, almost the whole time, and since basic training. And he lived in Lima High and worked for the, I think it was a nickel-plated railroad. I think that's what they called it. And we went to visit him, and his name was Joe Babona. He was a little Italian guy. And
He's up in Pennsylvania too.
yeah, but he never did come see me. And then I stopped up in Pennsylvania to see one. His name was George Storr, and he was older than I am, but he was a real good friend of mine when we was in the service. And he never come see me, and we never communicated. And I've never heard from anybody. Only I did get some literature when they was having a reunion. Where was they having that reunion at? I forget
I
now.
don't remember.
But anyway, they was having a reunion. They got an invitation to that, but I never did go.
Now, is it a reunion for people who were in the Air Corps?
No, it was a reunion for people who was in my outfit.
The engineers.
The engineers. It was
Have you ever...
369th Engineers. I was in, and then the 1394th Engineers.
Okay. Have you ever been to one of the reunions?
No, I've never been to one of the reunions.
Okay.
But tell you about my work experience now. After I went to work for the Hazel Atlas, then I quit before it shut down, but it shut down and left here about 1950.
It was after Daddy died.
Yeah, 58.
Daddy died in
50,
56.
I think it shut down, and see, Continental Can bought them out, and then they closed it down, and they give people jobs other places like Olean, New York, Plainfield, Illinois, and Montgomery, Alabama. And my brother worked there. Tobe, my older brother, he worked there, and he went to Montgomery, Alabama. But I stayed here, and my brother and I, we went in business in Ralph, my brother was in the Navy. We went in business together, and we bought a small filling station right up here, and together as partners, and we thought maybe we'd call it Soldier and Sailor or something like that, because he was a sailor and I was a soldier. But then we decided to call it Weaver Brothers. So we was in business for 43 years together. We finally bought some property, and built a new station in 1950. We started in 54. Yeah, started in 54 and built a new station. It was an Amoco station right up here where the Go-Mart is now.
Okay.
And we was in business there for 43 years together, and it went from Amoco moved out of the state of West Virginia, and then Chevron come in, and we took on Chevron. And then when we was ready to retire,
You also had a body shop.
oh yeah, right beside it we had a repair shop, a body shop, and then we bought another piece of ground and we built car wash. So we had 3 car wash. We had an automatic car wash to start with and 2 self-service bays. And we leased out the repair shop and we run the car wash ourselves. And my brother and I, and we worked together 43 years. And we used to fight all the time when we was growing up. But we never had any fights after we went in business together.
After you grew up.
Yeah, and so it worked out real good. And then when we was ready to retire, John Heater, who is the president at Go-Mart, he was supplying our gasoline, and he decided that he'd like to buy our station, so he bought us out. And then after he bought us out, well then he changed it into a Go-Mart station, which is up there now, the Go-Mart. And then the repair shop, Ralph's boy Randy has the repair shop, and he calls it Weaver Brothers now. And that was, and then the car wash, we sold that to Randy too. So now we're out of business. We're both retired.
What was the repair shop called when you and your brother had it?
It started out as American Auto Body. It called American Auto Body. We had it leased out to 2 young men, and they had it for 9 years. And then we leased it out to other people, and now it's called Weaver Brothers.
Okay.
It took our
How long have you been retired from that?
retired in 1988.
Okay. All right. Sounds like you've had a busy life. Done a lot.
But when we first started in
That's why
business,
he's never home.
when we first started in business, just the 2 of us worked, and we later hired employees to help us. And we had a lot of young men over the years that went on to different things. We've had some of them that been on in professional life and made real good. And I just wish we'd have kept track of how many people we employed over them 43 years, which was a lot of.
They'd work 10,
We
12
lost-
hours a day.
Yeah.
We worked long hours.
You
10,
probably
12
had
hours.
trouble closing of the evening, didn't you?
And sometimes
People
you
kept
would,
pulling
yeah.
in.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we'd have to.
And when we first started to work, we worked every day but Christmas. And then we decided we was going to take Thanksgiving off. And then we decided we was going to take Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's off. And then, but we always worked 7 days a week, at least 14 hours a day. We was open. But then after that, we started closing on Sundays.
Yeah. Okay.
Didn't work on Sundays.
Let me ask you just a few more questions about
Sure.
the military. Did you receive any awards?
Yes, I should have mentioned that. Our unit received the President's Citation Unit Award when we was on Guadalcanal.
Okay, now what is that?
Well, that's a President Award is an award that they give you that award for doing something special for the war effort. In our unit, I don't know what all that consists of, but our unit was excelled in a lot of things. So, and I guess we tried real hard, and so our unit was awarded that. And while I was on Cebu, I actually stood guard on a mountain while General MacArthur come up the mountain, and his command car turned right around in front of me, and I saluted. I was that close to General MacArthur. That was on Cebu, the island of Cebu. See, when they secure an island, they always do it before the shooting stops. It's just for more or less for publicity. And he come up this mountain, and we was all there, standing guard on this mountain there, because needed a lot of protection, see, because the Japs was all around, and they come up there and turned around, and then he went back, and that's where you seen him in the news, where he walked out in the water, and come ashore.
Great. Okay.
But I never got any other medals like the Silver Star or nothing like that.
Were you ever wounded?
No, I never got the Purple Heart. I got the Good Conduct Medal and the President Union Citation, and that's a red bar on it that I have on my uniform.
Okay. What is your best memory of the war?
I think the best memory of the war, I always wanted to go to the service, and so that's why I volunteered, and I enjoyed this service real much, and I think maybe I would have stayed in the service if my mother hadn't been a widow woman, and I wanted to come back and help her. But I enjoyed the service, and I enjoyed being with the other men in the service, and it was an exciting time, and I wouldn't take nothing for it, but I wouldn't want to do it again, because I was the type of person that I'd volunteer for anything or everything, and when you're young like that, you don't realize any danger, and so that I never realized that I was in all the danger that we was in at the time.
Can you describe the most significant event you witnessed?
Well, that would probably be when General MacArthur came on that mountain.
All right. Are there things today that remind you of the war, like maybe certain noises or certain odors or?
Yeah, well, not in particular, not around here. I don't think it's just not the same. But you didn't get to take a bath very often. You didn't get to brush your teeth as often as you wanted to. You didn't get. There's a lot of things you couldn't do. Now, when we was on Cebu, they come by every once in a while, and they have big water trucks like a fire truck, and carried water, and they would tell everybody to strip off, and then they would hose you down, and then they'd give you a couple of minutes to soap up, and then they'd hose you down again, and that was your bath, and you didn't get that very often.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask you, when we put this on our site, would you want your address and phone number listed so if another veteran sees you, they can call you if they
Yeah,
like?
you could put my telephone number on there too.
Okay.
265.
I have it. Okay. Yeah. And I think I have your mailing address.
Yeah, I'll put my mailing address on there.
Okay. Let me ask you, is there anything else about the war you'd like to mention that maybe I didn't ask?
Well, and I really enjoy being in the cover guard too. I would like to say that we got a bunch of good comrades in the cover guard, and they get along with each other, and they do a superb job, and I really enjoy doing it. And it don't seem like a chore to me, but once I get that uniform on, I don't care how many comrades I have to bury that day, because when I got that uniform on, well then all I'm dedicated for is to bury them other veterans.
Sure. I think that's a really good service that you perform, because you guys go out there no matter what the weather is,
That's right.
what day of the week it is, what time it is, you are there.
Yeah, and most of them have medical problems too, and you'd be surprised how many of them in that color guard has had open heart surgery. I know we counted on her hands there. Now I think there's about, out of the 25, I think there's at least 8 or 10 that's had open heart surgery.
Well, and not only open heart surgery, you have a couple that's had knee surgery.
Oh yeah, other medical.
There are always.
Well, there's Fawcett. He's had knee surgery plus open heart surgery.
Oh, I didn't know he had heart surgery.
Yeah, he had open heart surgery. Yeah.
Daryl's had-
And Daryl Poling, he's not